The splash that stopped his heart. Daniel had never seen the river so calm. It stretched wide and shining under the alien sun, the water a strange pale blue that seemed to glow from within. He stood on the edge of the marketplace, holding a small bag of alien fruit, watching traders shout over prices. The air smelled of spice and wet stone, and alien voices mixed with the sound of flowing water. It should have been a peaceful day, but then he heard it, a sudden, sharp scream. Followed by the splash, his head turned instantly toward the river. Ripples spread across the water, wider and wider. For a moment, he saw nothing but the glow of the river's strange surface. Then his eyes caught a small figure, thrashing, sinking. That was a child. No, not human. Her skin was pale silver, almost luminous. Thin tendrils of hair floated around her head like streams of light. Her large eyes were wide with panic, catching the sunlight even as she disappeared beneath the surface. The crowd at the market noticed too. People gasped. A few pointed. Yet no one moved. "She's gone in the deep water," a tall alien muttered. "She will be claimed," another whispered, voice heavy with fear. Daniel's heart pounded. "Why aren't you helping her?" he demanded, looking around. But no one stepped forward. Instead, some took a step back. "The river will take you too," an old alien woman warned. "It does not give back what it takes." Daniel didn't waste another second. He dropped the bag of fruit, tore off his coat, and ran. The stones under his boots were slippery. But his mind was fixed on the silver-skinned girl disappearing into the glowing depths. Then he jumped. The water was shockingly cold, like diving into ice. The chill stabbed through his body, stealing his breath. He opened his eyes, but the river burned them with its strange, shimmering light. The current was stronger than he had expected, pushing, twisting, trying to spin him away from her dot through the haze. He saw her again. She was sinking fast, her arms reaching upward, bubbles spilling from her mouth. Her movements were slowing. Daniel kicked hard, each stroke a battle against the current. His chest began to ache, his lungs screaming for air, but he couldn't. Stop, not now. The glow of the water made her look like she was falling into a dream. He reached out, just a little further. His fingers brushed her arm. She didn't react. He grabbed her wrist and pulled her close. She was heavier than he expected, like she was made of stone instead of flesh. Alien biology, he thought briefly. Kicking. With all his strength, he turned upward. The light above wavered, and the surface seemed far away. His grip on her tightened. He would not let go. The current changed, swirling around them in circles. It felt almost alive, as if invisible hands were trying to pull them both deeper. His mind screamed at him to move faster. He broke the surface with a gasp, sucking in air so sharp it hurt. The girl's head was above water now, but she was limp in his arms. "Hold on," he shouted, though she couldn't hear him. He started swimming for the bank. The crowd's faces were a blur, voices mixing into a low roar. He could see some waving, some shouting, something he couldn't understand. Then something cold brushed against his leg. He kicked hard, thinking it was just the current, but then it wrapped around him. Tight, something strong was pulling him back toward the deeper water. He almost lost his grip on the girl, but his instinct forced him to hold her even tighter. He kicked again and again, but the grip on his leg only grew stronger. For a moment, his mind flashed with a terrifying thought. Maybe this was why no one had tried to save her. Maybe the river didn't just drown. Maybe it kept. He looked toward the bank. It was only a few meters away now. He could see the rocky edge, the shallow water. If he could just get there with a final, desperate push, he lunged forward. Whatever was on his leg slipped loose for a moment, and he used that moment to drag them both closer. His arms were Numb, his chest on fire, he could hear the rushing in his ears. But he couldn't tell if it was the river or his own heartbeat. The bank was almost there. He reached out, fingers touching mud, but just as he tried to pull himself out, the unseen force yanked again, harder this time. He was pulled waist-deep back into the river. The girl's head slipped dangerously close to the water. He gritted his teeth and held her above the surface, no matter what. His muscles screamed, his vision blurred. The crowd on shore was shouting louder now, their words mixing with the strange roar of the river, and then he felt something move under the water. Not just one thing, many. The current twisted in unnatural ways, curling around his body. His heart froze as he realized he was not alone in the river. The splash that stopped his heart, Daniel had never seen the river so calm. It stretched wide and shining under the alien sun, the water a strange pale blue that seemed to glow from within. He stood on the edge of the marketplace, holding a small bag of alien fruit, watching traders shout over prices. The air smelled of spice and wet stone, and alien voices mixed with the sound of flowing water. It should have been a peaceful day, but then he heard it. A sudden, sharp scream, followed by the splash. His head turned instantly toward the river. Ripples spread across the water, wider and wider. For a moment, he saw nothing but the glow of the river's strange surface. Then his eyes caught a small figure, thrashing, sinking. That was a child. No, not human. Her skin was pale silver, almost luminous. Thin tendrils of hair floated around her head like streams of light. Her large eyes were wide with panic, catching the sunlight even as she disappeared beneath the surface. The crowd at the market noticed too. People gasped. A few pointed. Yet no one moved. "She's gone in the deep water," a tall alien muttered. "She will be claimed," another whispered, voice heavy with fear. Daniel's heart pounded. "Why aren't you helping her?" he demanded, looking around. But no one stepped forward. Instead, some took a step back. "The river will take you too," an old alien woman warned. "It does not give back what it takes." Daniel didn't waste another second. He dropped the bag of fruit, tore off his coat, and ran. The stones under his boots were slippery. But his mind was fixed on the silver-skinned girl disappearing into the glowing depths. Then he jumped. The water was shockingly cold, like diving into ice. The chill stabbed through his body, stealing his breath. He opened his eyes, but the river burned them with its strange, shimmering light. The current was stronger than he had expected, pushing, twisting, trying to spin him away from her dot through the haze. He saw her again. She was sinking fast, her arms reaching upward, bubbles spilling from her mouth. Her movements were slowing. Daniel kicked hard, each stroke a battle against the current. His chest began to ache, his lungs screaming for air, but he couldn't. Stop, not now. The glow of the water made her look like she was falling into a dream. He reached out, just a little further. His fingers brushed her arm. She didn't react. He grabbed her wrist and pulled her close. She was heavier than he expected, like she was made of stone instead of flesh. Alien biology, he thought briefly. Kicking with all his strength, he turned upward. The light above wavered, and the surface seemed far away. His grip on her tightened. He would not let go. The current changed, swirling around them in circles. It felt almost alive, as if invisible hands were trying to pull them both deeper. His mind screamed at him to move faster. He broke the surface with a gasp, sucking in air so sharp it hurt. The girl's head was above water now, but she was limp in his arms. "Hold on," he shouted, though she couldn't hear him. He started swimming for the bank. The crowd's faces were a blur, voices mixing into a low roar. He could see some waving, some shouting, something he couldn't understand. Then something cold brushed against his leg. He kicked hard, thinking it was just the current, but then it wrapped around him. Tight. Something strong was pulling him back toward the deeper water. He almost lost his grip on the girl, but his instinct forced him to hold her even tighter. He kicked again and again, but the grip on his leg only grew stronger. For a moment, his mind flashed with a terrifying thought. Maybe this was why no one had tried to save her. Maybe the river didn't just drown. Maybe it kept. He looked toward the bank. It was only a few meters away now. He could see the rocky edge, the shallow water. If he could just get there with a final, desperate push, he lunged forward. Whatever was on his leg slipped loose for a moment, and he used that moment to drag them both closer. His arms were numb, his chest on fire. He could hear the rushing in his ears, but he couldn't tell if it was the river or his own heartbeat. The bank was almost there. He reached out fingers, touching mud. But just as he tried to pull himself out, the unseen force yanked again, harder this time. He was pulled waist-deep back into the river. The girl's head slipped dangerously close to the water. He gritted his teeth and held her above the surface, no matter what. His muscles screamed. His vision blurred. The crowd on shore was shouting louder now, their words mixing with the strange roar of the river, and then he felt something move under the water. Not just one thing, many. It's a current twisted in unnatural ways, curling around his body. His heart froze as he realized he was not alone in the river. The grip of the current. The moment Daniel tried to pull the girl closer to shore, the grip on his leg tightened. It wasn't just the pull of water. It felt like fingers, or worse, a rope made of muscle coiling around his calf. His heart hammered. Every instinct told him to let go of the girl so he could fight free. But he didn't. She was still limp in his arms, her small silver face pale, lips turning bluish. If he let her go, she would sink like a stone. The river roared louder in his ears. Hold on. He growled through clenched teeth, though the words were as much for himself as for her. The crowd on the bank stood frozen. A few shouted warnings in their alien tongue, voices sharp with fear. He couldn't make out all the words, but he caught one repeated again and again. Depth keeper. The thing on his leg gave a sudden, powerful yank. His head went under. The icy water closed over him, muffling the world above. Daniel kicked hard, his lungs already aching for air. His free hand struck at the water, trying to find the creature. But all he felt was something smooth and cold sliding up his leg toward his hip. He knew he couldn't win if it pulled him any deeper. He forced his eyes open despite the sting. The glow of the river made everything hazy, shapes twisting in the current. And then he saw it. A long, shadowy figure gliding beneath him. Its body moved like smoke in the water, yet its grip was strong as iron. He couldn't see a face, only faint glowing marks along its sides, marks that pulsed like a heartbeat. Panic surged through him, but so did something else, anger. No, he thought. You're not taking her. He tightened his hold on the alien girl, bent his knee, and kicked down with all his strength. The thing loosened its grip for a split second. It was all he needed. With a desperate pull, he surged upward again, breaking the surface with a gasp. Air tore into his burning lungs. The bank was closer, now close enough that he could see individual stones, and the wet moss clinging to them. He tried to push forward, kicking with his free leg, dragging the girl with every ounce of strength left in his body. The crowd was in chaos. Some aliens waved their arms frantically, shouting for him to hurry. Others had turned away as if they couldn't bear to watch. Daniel, a voice suddenly called in the common trade language. It came from a young alien boy standing at the edge of the crowd. The current will not stop. Must get to the shallow rocks. Daniel spotted them, a cluster of jagged stones jutting from the water a few meters to his right. If he could reach them, maybe he could climb out before the thing below pulled him under again. He shifted direction, his muscles screaming in protest. The cold was sinking into his bones, slowing him down. The girl's head lolled against his shoulder. He could feel how light her breathing was, how fragile her life had become. Another surge from below. The grip returned, this time wrapping around. Both his ankles, his legs were trapped. No, 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 no. He kicked wildly, twisting his body, but the pull was stronger. The water spun around him like a whirlpool. The girl's small hand twitched against his chest. It was faint, almost nothing, but it jolted him with fresh determination. He bent forward, planting his free hand into the water in front of him and dragging his body forward like he was crawling through the river itself. Inch by inch, he fought. Against the pull, the stones were almost within reach. The shadow below shifted. It was rising toward them now. Daniel risked a glance down and saw more glowing marks, several lines moving side by side. His blood turned cold. There wasn't just one creature. There were at least three. The crowd on the bank gasped as the water around him began to churn. Foam bubbled to the surface. Something broke through for just a second, a dark, ridged fin, then vanished again. His mind screamed at him to hurry. He lunged forward, stretching his arm toward the nearest rock. His fingertips scraped the rough edge. Another pull yanked him down to his chest. The girl slipped lower in his arms, her head dangerously close to going under again. He locked his arm around her, using the other to cling desperately to the rock. The jagged edge cut into his palm. But pain was nothing now. With one last roar of effort, he hauled his body and hers upward, breaking free of the water's pull just enough to plant one foot on the stone. A final violent tug from below nearly tore him back in, but he threw his weight forward. His knee hit another rock, scraping deep, but then he was in the shallows. The water was only waist deep here, and the creatures didn't follow. The crowd erupted in cries, some relieved, others still fearful. Daniel stumbled toward the bank, half carrying, half dragging the girl until they were both on solid ground. He collapsed on his knees, gasping, the girl limp in his arms. Her chest wasn't moving. His heart froze. The world seemed to narrow until all he could see was her still face. The silver glow in her skin had faded. Her eyes were closed. No, not after all that, he whispered. He pressed his ear to her chest. Nothing. The cold from the river still clung to him, but inside he felt only fire, desperate, burning. Refusal to lose her now. The crowd watched silently, holding their breath. Daniel set her down gently on the wet ground, his own breath shaking. He knew what he had to do, even if they didn't understand it. The thing beneath Daniel's knees pressed into the wet ground, water dripping from his hair into the alien girl's still face. She wasn't breathing. The silence around him was so heavy it felt like the whole world had stopped. Her silver skin had lost its glow, turning a pale, dull gray. Her lips were slightly open, but no air passed between them. No. Come on, stay. With me, Daniel whispered. He glanced up. The crowd of aliens stood in a half circle, their large eyes fixed on him. Some looked curious, others almost afraid. None stepped forward. One tall alien finally spoke. She has been claimed. The Depth Keeper does not give back what it takes. Daniel ignored him. He pressed both hands on her chest and began pushing, firm and quick. Breathe. Come on, breathe. A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd. A few aliens whispered sharply to each other, as if what he was doing was forbidden. He didn't care. He tilted her head back and covered her mouth with his, forcing a breath of air into her lungs. Her chest rose slightly, then fell. Nothing, another push. Another breath, again and again. The cold air burned in his own chest, but he kept going. Suddenly, dash movement. Her fingers twitched against the ground. A small cough escaped her lips, and a trickle of river water spilled from her mouth. Her eyes fluttered open, those large glowing eyes that had been dim moments ago now flickered weakly. She stared at him in confusion, then gripped his arm with surprising strength for someone so small. The crowd gasped in unison. "She lives." Someone whispered. But before relief could sink in, a deep, rumbling sound rose from the river behind them. The water was moving again, slow at first, then faster. Ripples formed, spreading toward the shore like something big was coming. Daniel looked up sharply. His instincts screamed danger. The girl's grip tightened on his arm, her glowing eyes wide with fear. She spoke quickly in her own language, short, urgent words. Daniel didn't understand the meaning, but he understood the tone. "It's coming from the river's center." A dark shape rose beneath the surface. The water churned violently. A shadow larger than any boat he'd seen drifted closer. The crowd backed away. Some grabbed their children and ran. Others stayed frozen. The girl pulled at his arm, trying to get him to move away from the shore. But Daniel stayed still, his eyes locked on the water. Then he saw it, the same ridged fin he'd glimpsed underwater earlier, followed by another, and another. 3 in total, slicing through the surface like the spines of some ancient beast. A massive shape loomed under the glowing blue water. It moved with terrifying grace, circling as if deciding whether to come closer. Daniel's mind raced. This thing. It's the depth keeper they spoke of. The one that tried to drag me under. The girl whispered again, this time pressing herself against his side as if seeking protection. The fins slowed. The shadow beneath them stopped. The water surface stilled, but the tension in the air only grew heavier, and then it rose. A monstrous head broke through the river, glistening and alien. Its skin shimmered with the same silver glow as the girl's, but darker, older. Long tendrils flowed from its jaw like living ropes. As the size of plates stared straight at Daniel, the crowd gasped and stumbled back. Daniel stood his ground, though every muscle screamed at him to run. The creature made a sound, not a roar, but a deep, vibrating hum that shook the air to his shock. The girl replied in the same tone, though hers was weaker, almost pleading. The depth keeper's gaze shifted between the two of them. Daniel felt it, tan intelligence, an awareness. It wasn't just an animal. Slowly, one of its long tendrils reached forward, sliding across the wet ground toward them. The girl flinched and pressed closer to Daniel. He didn't know what possessed him, but he stepped slightly in front of her, shielding her with his body. His heart pounded so loud he could hear it in his ears. The tendril stopped, hovering just inches from him. The creature tilted its massive head. Then, without warning, it touched the girl's ankle. She gasped. Daniel's hand instinctively went to his knife butt before he could act. The tendril slid back into the water. The depth keeper let out another low hum, softer this time, then slowly sank beneath the surface until only the ripples remained silence. The girl was shaking. Daniel turned to her. "What was that about?" he asked quietly, even though he knew. She couldn't understand his words. Her glowing eyes lifted to his. She whispered one word in her alien language, then said it again slowly, as if she wanted him to remember it. Bound. He didn't know what it meant in her culture, but he could feel the weight of it. The crowd stared at them, whispering to each other in urgent tones. An elder alien stepped forward, eyes narrowed. "Human, you have done more than save her. The river has seen you, and now you are part of its law." Daniel frowned, still catching his breath. "What does that mean?" The elder's gaze hardened. It means you must answer for what you have done. And it begins. Tonight. Breath of life Daniel didn't understand why the aliens looked at him that way. He had just pulled the small girl from the river. She was alive, breathing weak, but alive. Shouldn't that have been enough? But instead of smiles or thanks, the crowd parted in silence. From the back, 4 tall aliens in dark green armor stepped forward. Their long staffs glowed faintly at the tips, and their eyes never left him. The elder who had spoken earlier raised his voice. "You will come with us, human." Daniel frowned. Why? She needed help. You crossed the river's line. You touched one who was claimed by the Depth Keeper, the elder said, voice heavy. Our laws demand you answer for it. The little alien girl clung to his sleeve, shaking her head. She said something sharp in her language, her voice trembling but strong. The elder's expression softened for a moment, but then he turned away. The armored guards moved forward. One of them reached for Daniel's arm. He stepped back. "I'm not going anywhere until I know she's safe," he said firmly. "She is alive because of you," the elder replied. "But that is exactly why you must face judgment." The girl refused to let go of him. Her small hands gripped his sleeve like they were welded there. Daniel glanced at her. Those glowing eyes were full of fear. "Where are you taking him?" she demanded in her own language. One guard answered her, and whatever he said made her expression change from fear to shock. She looked up at Daniel and whispered in the common tongue, her accent heavy but clear enough to understand. "They want you to take the trial of the depths." Daniel's chest tightened. That sounded bad, very bad. They marched him through the marketplace, past stalls now half empty as people hurried out of the way. The girl followed, still holding on to him. No one stopped her. Soon they reached a large stone building near the water's edge. The doors were carved with strange flowing pattern shapes like waves, fish, and spirals. Inside, the air was cooler, the floor damp underfoot. At the far end, an arc of tall, robed aliens sat on high seats. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. This was the council. The elder stepped forward and bowed. "The human has brought the river child back from the depths. He has been marked by the keeper. Our law is clear. He must be tested." Daniel raised his hands. "Look, I didn't mean to break any law. I just saw a kid drowning in silence," a woman on the council said, her voice cold but calm. "Your courage is noted, but the keeper touched you. Now it must see if you are worthy." The little girl stepped in front of Daniel, speaking quickly to the council. Her voice rose with every sentence, her hands shaking. Daniel couldn't understand her words, but her tone carried anger. One of the council members shook his head. "Child, the river's choice cannot be refused. If the human is bound to you, he must prove himself. Bound." Daniel repeated. "What does that even mean?" The elder looked at him. "When the keeper touches one, it ties them to the life of the one they saved. Your fate and hers are now joined. If you fall, she falls. If you survive, you both live free." Daniel stared at the girl. She was looking up at him, eyes wide. That small, trembling smile on her lips told him she understood more than he did. The councilwoman raised her staff. The trial of the depths begins at dawn. That night, they placed Daniel in a small stone room by the river. The walls were damp, the air heavy with the scent of water. The girl sat beside him on the floor, refusing to leave. "You don't have to be here," Daniel told her softly. "I do," she said in her own language. Then she switched to the few words of the common tongue she knew. "You saved me. Now I stay." He couldn't help but give a small smile. "Guess we're both stuck in this." She tilted her head, studying his face. Then she reached up and touched his cheek lightly, as if to make sure he was real. You breathe for me." She whispered. Daniel didn't know what to say to that. So he simply nodded. Outside, the river was restless. He could hear it from the room, the constant rush, the low hum that seemed to vibrate through the floor. He closed his eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. His mind kept replaying the moment underwater, the shadow moving below, the tendrils wrapping around his leg. He didn't know if he could face that thing again. But if his life was tied to hers, he didn't have a choice. Just before dawn, a loud knock came at the door. The guard stepped inside. "It is time." The girl jumped to her feet and stood beside him as he rose. Her hands were clenched into fists. She looked at him once and nodded, small, but full of meaning. Daniel followed the guards out into the early light. The river shimmered in the rising sun. The current looked stronger than before, the glowing blue water swirling in slow, hypnotic patterns. The council was waiting on the shore. The elder stepped forward and pointed to the water. "Enter, human. The keeper will decide if you are worthy." Daniel took a breath, the cold morning air filling his lungs. His eyes met the girl's one last time. She gave a small smile, but her hands trembled. Then, without looking back, he stepped toward the river. The river looked different at dawn. It wasn't just water, it was alive. The glow beneath its surface pulsed slowly, like the beat of a sleeping giant's heart. The current moved in wide, swirling paths, as if it knew something was about to happen. Daniel stood at the shore, his boots sinking slightly into the wet mud. Behind him, the alien council watched in silence. The girl stood among them, her glowing eyes fixed on him. She looked small, almost fragile, but her gaze was fierce. The elder stepped forward. "Once you enter, you may not return until the keeper has chosen. If you are judged unworthy, you will not rise again." Daniel's mouth was dry. "And if I win? Then you and the river child will be free from its claim. You will both walk away." Daniel glanced at the girl. She didn't smile, but she nodded once, just enough to let him know she believed in him. He pulled off his coat, dropped it in the mud, and stepped into the water. The cold hit instantly, cutting through him like a blade. He waded deeper until the current reached his waist. Then his chest. The elder raised his staff. "Begin." Daniel took a deep breath and dove under. The river swallowed him in silence. Down here, the glow was stronger, the water almost bright enough to see without opening his eyes wide. Strange shapes drifted in the distance, schools of tiny glowing fish, ribbons of plant life swaying in slow motion. The current caught him immediately, dragging him toward the center. He fought against it, kicking and pulling himself forward, but it was like swimming through a living force that wanted him elsewhere. Then he saw it, the depth-keeper. It moved through the water like a shadow, its long body winding and curling. Glowing lines ran down its sides, pulsing faintly. Its head was massive, crowned with fin-like ridges, and its eyes locked on him with cold intelligence. Daniel's chest tightened, not from lack of air, but from the sudden realization that this thing was not just a creature. It was something older, something that had been watching for a long time. The keeper circled him once, its long tendrils brushing his arms and legs. The touch wasn't gentle, it was testing him, feeling the strength in his muscles. Then, without warning, it struck. One tendril wrapped around his torso, another around his leg, and the current surged as the keeper dragged him downward. The pressure built fast. His ears rang. His lungs screamed. Daniel grabbed one of the tendrils and tried to twist it free, but it was like gripping a steel cable. The keeper pulled him into darkness, away from the glowing fish, away from the plants, until they reached a deep cavern. Here, the walls were covered in strange carvings. They glowed faintly, images of humanoid figures and great river beasts. Some carvings showed the beasts attacking, but others showed them bowing. The keeper stopped, still holding him. Its massive head tilted, as if waiting for him to understand something. Daniel stared at the carvings. In one, a figure was diving into the river to save a small alien child, just like he had done. The next carving showed the same figure standing beside the keeper, both looking outward as if they were allies. The creature's grip loosened slightly. Daniel's mind raced. This isn't just about fighting. It's about proving I'm not an enemy. He slowly raised his empty hands, spreading them wide to show he wasn't holding a weapon. The keeper's eyes narrowed. It released his leg but kept one tendril on his arm. Then it began to pull him toward a narrow tunnel in the rock. The current here was faster, rushing past him in powerful streams. He kicked to keep up, following the keeper deeper. They emerged into a chamber filled with more carvings and, at the center, a glowing sphere floating just above the riverbed. It pulsed with light, and Daniel could feel its warmth, even in the freezing water. The keeper stopped beside it, then turned to him, holding out a tendril toward the sphere. Daniel hesitated. Was it a trap? But something inside told him this was part of the trial. He reached out and touched the sphere. The moment his fingers met its surface, a shock went through him, not painful, but powerful. Images flooded his mind. Rushing water, alien faces, the keeper swimming through endless rivers. And then, the moment he had pulled the girl from the water, he saw it again, but from the keeper's eyes. The creature had not been hunting her. It had been testing if any would try to save her. No one had moved, except him. The vision faded. When Daniel opened his eyes, the keeper was still there, watching him. Then, slowly, it uncoiled the last tendril from his arm. It swam upward, and this time, it let him follow freely. They broke the surface. Together, the crowd gasped as the keeper's head rose from the water beside Daniel. The girl ran to the edge, her glowing eyes wide. The keeper let out a low, deep hum. The sound seemed to roll through the ground and into Daniel's bones. Then, in one smooth motion, it dipped its head toward him almost like a bow before, sinking back beneath the surface. Silence hung in the air. The elder stepped forward. The keeper has chosen. You are worthy. The bond is complete. You are free to leave, human. The girl rushed to him, throwing her small arms around his waist. She spoke quickly in her language, words tumbling over each other. Even if he didn't understand every word, he knew the meaning. She was thanking him, but somewhere in the back of Daniel's mind, couldn't shake the feeling that the keeper hadn't freed him completely. It had bound him in another way. He didn't yet understand. Into the depths, the morning after the trial should have been peaceful. Daniel had survived. The keeper had accepted him. The bond was sealed. The council had declared him free, but Daniel couldn't sleep, even now. Standing on the quiet shore, he kept replaying the images the keeper had shown him in that glowing sphere, images of the river, the girl, and the strange bond that now tied them together. Something about it felt unfinished. The little alien girl appeared beside him, barefoot on the damp sand. Her silver skin shimmered faintly in the morning light, and her glowing eyes searched his face. "You think still?" she said in broken common tongue. Daniel smiled faintly. "Yeah, I'm thinking." She tilted her head. "You not happy?" He crouched down so they were eye level. "I'm glad you're safe, but I feel like the keeper wanted me to see something more. Something I missed." The girl's expression changed. She glanced at the river, then back at him. "Keeper call you again," she said softly, almost in a whisper. The council tried to stop him. "You've proven yourself, human," the elder said, his voice firm. "The keeper will not harm you or the child now. You owe it nothing more." Daniel shook his head. "This isn't about owing. I think it was showing me something in that cavern for a reason." The elder frowned. "Phew. Return to the depths willingly. Those who do rarely come back. Daniel glanced at the girl. She stood behind him, small but steady, as if she had already decided she would follow him no matter what. "I have to go," he said finally. The elder's gaze hardened. "Then go with the river's blessing, and may it not turn against you." The water was colder this time. Daniel waded in without hesitation, the girl standing on the bank. Watching silently the moment his head went under, the current caught him like a living hand, pulling him toward the deep center. He let it take him this time. Shapes passed him. In the glowfish, strange plants and shadows too big to name. And then, like before, the keeper appeared. Its massive body moved with slow, deliberate power. It circled him once, then stopped in front of him. This time, there was no testing grip, no tendrils wrapping around him. Instead, the keeper turned and began swimming downward, deeper than before. Daniel followed. The descent felt endless. The light dimmed until only the keeper's glowing markings lit the way. The pressure on his chest grew heavier, his lungs aching, but he kept going. Finally, the tunnel opened into a vast chamber unlike anything he'd seen before. The walls were carved with even older images, faded, but still clear. Here, the story was different. It showed the river overflowing, villages drowning, and creatures like the keeper attacking anything that moved. But in the last carving, a single figure, tall, armored, and holding a sphere of light, stood between the creatures and the villages, forcing the waters back. Daniel stepped closer. The face of the figure was smooth and strange, but something about the stance, the hands, the shape of the shoulders, it almost looked human. The keeper swam closer to the carvings, then turned its massive head toward him. Its eyes held a strange weight, as if asking, "Do you understand now?" Daniel's heart pounded. "You want me to protect the river, like they did." The keeper didn't answer, but slowly extended one long tendril toward the floor, resting. There was an object, small, round, and glowing faintly. It was the same kind of sphere he had touched before, but darker, cracked in places, as if it had been damaged long ago. When Daniel reached for it, the moment his fingers closed around the surface, visions rushed into his mind again, violent storms, black water surging through alien lands, and creatures far worse than the keeper tearing through the depths. These were not guardians. These were predators, and they were waking. The vision ended abruptly. Daniel gasped for breath, the cold water pressing in on all sides. The keeper had moved closer, its tendrils curling in a way that almost seemed urgent. "You want me to stop them?" Daniel realized. The keeper tilted its head once, slow, deliberate. Before Daniel could respond, a low, thunderous sound rolled through the water. It wasn't the keeper. It was coming from deeper below. From the black chasm at the far end of the chamber, the keeper moved suddenly, pushing him upward with a powerful sweep of its body. Daniel clutched the cracked sphere to his chest as the current rocketed him toward the surface. He burst into the open air, coughing hard. The girl was already at the shore, running into the shallows to help pull him out. Her eyes went wide when she saw the sphere. She touched it gently, her fingers trembling. "Old heart," she whispered. Daniel stared at her. "You know what this is?" She nodded slowly. "It called the river, make keeper strong. Without it, keeper cannot fight." "Fight what?" he asked. She looked toward the deeper water, her small voice barely above a whisper. "Dark ones. They wake." Daniel turned to the river again, his chest tightening. The trial was over, but the real battle was just beginning. The river was no longer calm. Even from the shore, Daniel could see the water swirling in strange patterns. The glow beneath its surface shifting from soft blue to sharp flashes of white. The little alien girl stood beside him, clutching the cracked sphere tightly. Her glowing eyes reflected the restless water. "They are close," she said in her broken, common tongue. Daniel didn't need her warning. He could feel it. The same low vibration he'd heard underwater now thudded. In his chest, growing stronger every second, the keeper rose from the depths without a sound. Its massive head broke the surface, water running off its ridged crown. It moved toward the shallows and stopped just a few meters away, its glowing eyes fixed on Daniel. He didn't need words to understand. 'Twas time. The council gathered on the shore, voices sharp with fear. The elder pointed to the sphere in the girl's hands. "If that is truly the old heart, it must be returned to the depths. Only there can it awaken the keeper's full strength." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Then we take it back." Now, the elder hesitated. "Human, the depths will not be empty. If the Dark Ones have woken, they will be waiting." Daniel glanced at the girl. She was staring at him, her expression steady despite the fear in her eyes. "I go too," she said softly. He shook his head. "No, it's too dangerous." She stepped closer, gripping the sphere tighter. "You save me, I save you." There was no arguing with that. They waded into the water together. The keeper lowered its massive body so they could climb onto its broad back. The skin was smooth but strong, like wet stone. Daniel sat behind the girl, holding her steady as the keeper slid beneath the surface. The descent was fast this time. The current carried them deeper, past glowing plants and darting schools of fish, into darker water where the light struggled to reach. The sphere in the girl's hands began to glow brighter, as if guiding them. Then the black shapes appeared at first. They looked like shadows, but their movement was wrong, jerky, too fast. As they drew closer, Daniel saw the truth. Long, eel-like bodies with sharp fins, their eyes glowing red instead of blue. Their mouths were lined with rows of needle teeth. The Dark Ones, they swarmed in from both sides. The keeper roared a deep, vibrating sound that sent waves through the water. Several Dark Ones darted away, but more came. Fearless, Daniel drew his knife. It felt small in his hand compared to the monsters in front of him, but it was all he had. One of the creatures lunged, its teeth flashing. Daniel swung the blade, slicing across its side. Dark. Blood swirled into the water, and the creature recoiled. The keeper fought fiercely, tendrils snapping like whips, knocking enemies away. But there were too many. "Go!" Daniel shouted to the girl, pointing toward the cavern ahead where the carvings glowed faintly. "Get the sphere to the heart." She hesitated, eyes wide. "Now!" he yelled. She slid off the keeper's back, swimming hard toward the cavern. Daniel stayed where he was, turning to face the swarm. Every time one came close, he slashed or kicked, forcing them back. The keeper roared again, twisting its massive body to shield the girl from attacks. Daniel's lungs burned, but he kept moving. He had no air left for himself, but he wasn't about to let them reach her. He saw her reach the pedestal at the center of the cavern. She placed the sphere into a hollow space carved into the rock. The moment it touched, the entire river seemed to shiver. Light burst from the sphere, racing along cracks in the stone. Shooting up into the water above the keeper's glow, surged, brighter than Daniel had ever seen. It moved with new strength, its tendrils tearing through the swarm. The Dark Ones scattered, some fleeing into the black depths, others falling still in the water. The girl swam back toward him, the light from the sphere reflecting off her silver skin. Daniel grabbed her arm, pulling her up onto the keeper's back. They rose quickly, the dark water falling away beneath them until the glow of the surface broke above their heads. They burst into the open air, gasping. On the shore, the council and the gathered aliens watched in stunned silence. The keeper lowered them gently onto the sand, then slid back into the water, its massive head dipping in a slow bow before disappearing beneath the surface. The girl turned to Daniel. "You save river," she said softly. Then she smiled. Small, real smile that made her look younger. Daniel smiled back. "We saved it." She tilted her head. "Now, you've bound forever." He laughed quietly. The elder stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Human, the keeper has marked you as its chosen. You are now a protector of our waters. Wherever you go, the river will remember you." Daniel glanced at the girl, who was still holding his sleeve like she had the day he pulled her from the depths. "I'm not going anywhere without her," he said. The elder nodded slowly. "Then both of you will stand as guardians." That night, the river was calm again. The stars reflected off its surface, and the glow beneath was soft and steady. Daniel sat with the girl at the water's edge. She leaned against him, her voice barely above a whisper. "When I fall, you jump." He looked at her and smiled. Always. The river carried their promise into the depths.